if you're seeing the video camera, we've started a ministry that the sermons are going up on YouTube and also St. Jude's Facebook page. So like us, St. Jude on Facebook, and you'll always see it. And we've got to figure out a way to make sure these videos get so people can find it also. I love going to movies. I love taking that 90 minutes to 2 hours, sometimes a little longer, to go and to become completely into a different space and time, sometimes into a different world, and to lose myself. That I don't have to worry about the cares of my life, instead I can worry about the cares of the people on the screen. Whether it be for pure entertainment purposes, or whether it be sometimes cathartic, movies just have a way of touching me, and I bet they have a way of touching you sometimes too. And there's always, perhaps every once in a while, one movie that there's a lesson that comes from that movie. It might even been a brief scene that you go, aha, I think I get it now. One of those movies was released in 1995. The movie was called Jeffrey. Now, Jeffrey is the story of a young man in his 20s who decided to stop dating because he was so petrified that if he would be with anybody, that he would most certainly contract HIV. So he just said he would stop dating completely. And he became very angry with God. So much so that one day you found Jeffrey, who was not quite the most religious man in the world, find his way into a church, and he's kneeling down, and you can tell he's angry with God. And the priest sees him, and the priest is played by none other than Nathan Lane. And the priest takes Jeffrey into his office, and he goes to his shelves, and what he pulls out is an old vinyl record cover. And the record was from the original Broadway soundtrack of My Fair Lady. You know, about Eliza Doolittle. And the picture on the cover of that showed a line drawing of Eliza and the doctor down below, but they were like puppets on a string. And above there was this cloud with a figure of a man with a big white beard coming down that was controlling their actions. And the priest looked at Jeffrey and he said, "The problem, Jeffrey, is that this is your image of God. You think that we as human beings are puppets on a string being controlled by God. In other words, everything that happens on this planet is because it's exactly what God wanted and how God wants it, and we have no control." He said, the problem, though, with this image of yours is this picture that you think is God isn't God at all. The drawing was of George Bernard Shaw, the author of the story which My Fair Lady was based upon. Often our images of God are based on things that have happened in our lives or circumstances that have caused us to think that God is one way or not. I suppose it is the age-old human question, just who is God And who do we say God is for us? In this morning's gospel passage, we see this wonderful story where Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he asked one of those questions, who do people say that I am? Reminds me of the old junior high question when kids would ask, what do they think about me? What do the folks around think about me? Who do they really think that I am? And the responses were quite typical. Some thought that he might be John the Baptist coming back from the dead, or Elijah, or another prophet. But it was Peter himself who said that Jesus was the Messiah. Jesus was the anointed one. And for Peter, that meant that Jesus was going to go and Jesus was going to come and sweep all the Romans away. That Jesus was going to be this political Messiah that would allow the Jewish nation and people to be able to worship God their own way without influence of somebody else. And of course, just as Jeffrey was wrong with his understanding of who God was, Peter was wrong with his understanding of who Jesus was, as Jesus went on to say that he would suffer for us. You and I, on a daily basis, are confronted with the question that many ask: who is God? For those of us who call ourselves Christian, we find God incarnate, Emmanuel, in Jesus of Nazareth. We believe that God isn't some distant being that doesn't care about us at all. But we believe that God cared about you and me so much that in the midst of no matter how screwed up we are in our lives, that God loved us so much that God sent God's Son to be among us. To know what it's like when we suffer and hurt, are rejoicing or sad. That is our God. But there are days that we might think that this Jesus is nothing more than a great prophet. Somebody who should point us in the right direction but really has nothing to do with God. Then I wonder why we're here. We may think that Jesus was just some good man who taught a lot of good things, but who died on the cross and that was it. Then I wonder why we're here. We may believe that Jesus is like that picture of George Bernard Shaw that is hanging on to us like puppets on a string with no free will whatsoever, that controls every moment of our life, but then I wonder, why are we here? To have an incarnate God means that when you and I are going through life, when we're fearful of the test from the doctor, that we do not know what the results are going to be, that we can bring it to Jesus, who knows what it is like to fear. when we worry about our loved ones who might be in danger, we can know that Jesus himself worried about his disciples who were at danger for being arrested when he was arrested. When we struggle with where our next paycheck is going to be coming from, we know that we can bring it to Jesus, who himself was born homeless and spent 40 days and nights in the wilderness, only being provided for by God. No matter what is going on in your and my life, what makes Jesus so special is we can bring everything to him and he understands. He doesn't just walk away. He takes our hands and holds on to us tight. When we feel that he is moving more and more distant away from us, that kiss that he gave you and I at our baptism, that string that attaches from our soul to his soul, he is taking it and trying to pull us closer and closer and closer to him. When we slip from this life into the next, he is there with outstretched arms to grab us and say, "Welcome home, my good and faithful servant. Well done." To have this Jesus as our Lord is not going to be an easy path, though. He himself says to follow him, we must take up our cross and follow him. We must take up that instrument of death which can bring pain, because life in and of itself brings pain to us, because life has a way of happening. But God is always there. In that movie, Jeffrey finally got it. And he found somebody. And he found hope. My friends, this day you might need some hope in your life. Perhaps you are floundering a bit. Perhaps you're wondering just who this Jesus fella is and what it really means for you. Go to him. He's there for you with outstretched arms, saying, "I love you."